Hello everybody, welcome to my channel.
Jeanne Moreau, born January 23, 1928, died July 31, 2017, was a legendary French actress, singer, and filmmaker, regarded as one of the greatest figures in 20th-century European cinema. With a career spanning over 6 decades, she became known for her magnetic screen presence, complex emotional depth, and distinctive voice, embodying the spirit of French intellectual and cinematic sophistication. Early life and education. Jeanne Moreau was born in Paris, France, to a French father and an English mother, Katherine Buckley, who was a dancer with the Folies Bergère. Her upbringing was marked by the turbulence of World War II, during which her family lived in the unoccupied zone of Vichy France. After the war, she studied at the Conservatoire de Paris, where she discovered her passion for the theater. By the age of 20, she was performing at the Comédie-Française, the most prestigious theater company in France, a rare achievement for someone so young. Rise to fame. Moreau's early film appearances in the 1940s and 1950s were largely conventional, but her career took a defining turn when she was cast by Louis Malle in Elevator to the Gallows, 1958, and The Lovers, 1958. Her sensual, mysterious, and intelligent performances captured international attention, marking the beginning of her status as a muse of the French New Wave. Her collaboration with François Truffaut in Jules and Jim, 1962, became iconic. As Catherine, a free-spirited woman caught between two friends, Moreau embodied the emotional restlessness and romantic idealism that defined the era. The role remains one of the most celebrated in world cinema. Career highlights. Jeanne Moreau worked with some of the greatest directors of her time, both French and international, including Michelangelo Antonioni, La Notte, 1961, Orson Welles, The Trial, 1962, Chimes at Midnight, 1965, Luis Buñuel, Diary of a Chambermaid, 1964, Jacques Demy, Bay of Angels, 1963, Rainer Werner Fassbinder, Carrel, 1982. She also ventured into directing, with films like Lumiere, 1976, and L'Adolescent, 1979, showing her skill behind the camera. Artistry and persona. Moreau was known for her distinctive smoky voice, introspective demeanor, and fearless approach to complex, unconventional female characters. She rejected Hollywood glamour, choosing instead roles that reflected independence, passion, and melancholy. Her work helped redefine femininity in cinema, no longer passive or idealized, but intelligent, sensual, and self-aware. Off-screen, she was known for her intellect, charm, and sharp wit. She moved easily in artistic circles, befriending writers, philosophers, and filmmakers. Moreau was admired by contemporaries such as Jean Cocteau, Marguerite Duras, and Miles Davis, who composed the score for Elevator to the Gallows. Awards and legacy. Throughout her career, Jeanne Moreau received numerous honors, including César Award for Best Actress, La Vieille qui marche dans la mer, 1992, BAFTA Award, Viva Maria, 1965, Honorary Academy Award, Governor's Award, 1998, Lifetime Achievement Awards from Cannes, Venice, and Berlin film festivals. Her influence continues to resonate in global cinema, inspiring generations of actresses such as Juliette Binoche, Isabelle Huppert, and Marion Cotillard. Personal life and death. Moreau was married twice, first to actor Jean-Louis Richard and later to director William Friedkin, though both marriages ended in divorce. Known for her private nature, she rarely discussed her personal relationships, focusing instead on her artistic life. She passed away in Paris on July 31, 2017, at the age of 89. Her death marked the end of an era, But her image, eternal, enigmatic, and endlessly fascinating, remains a symbol of the golden age of French cinema. A singular artistic identity, Jeanne Moreau was not merely a film star. She was an artist who embodied the philosophy of cinema as poetry. Unlike many actresses of her generation, she consciously avoided being typecast. Her career choices were eclectic and daring, spanning from psychological drama to surrealist experiment. She once said, "I don't represent beauty. I represent the freedom of women." This belief guided her work, making her a symbol of the liberated, modern woman, intelligent, flawed, sensual, and self-possessed. Directors sought her not for superficial allure, but for her emotional honesty and spiritual gravity. Her acting style was subtle and instinctive. She preferred suggestion over demonstration, often communicating emotion through silence or a glance. François Truffaut described her as the greatest actress in the world, explaining that she carried the essence of a novel within her eyes. Musical career parallel to her acting, Jeanne Moreau developed a rich musical career, defined by her husky, expressive voice and literary sensibility. She recorded several albums, beginning with Le Tourbillon, The Whirlwind, a song written by Serge Rizvana for Jules and Jim. Its wistful melody and lyrics became one of French cinema's most enduring songs. Moreau collaborated with Serge Gainsbourg, who wrote India Song and Le Tourbillon de la Vie for her, blending chanson and spoken word in a way that matched her enigmatic persona. She performed on stage in cabarets and concerts throughout France and abroad, interpreting works by Jacques Brel, Marguerite Duras, and Bertolt Brecht. Her albums, including Jeanne Moreau Chante Marguerite Duras, 1968, and L'Aimé de la Poète, 1975, revealed her literary nature, more an interpreter of poetry than a traditional singer. Her voice, imperfect yet hypnotic, carried the same emotional truth as her performances on screen. Worldview and influence. Jeanne Moreau viewed cinema as a mirror of human experience, not an escape from it. She resisted celebrity culture, rejecting the notion of glamour as superficial. She valued authenticity and curiosity, qualities she believed necessary for both art and life. She often expressed disdain for the idea of being directed. Instead, she sought collaboration, bringing her own interpretation to every role. She said, "An actress should never be obedient. Obedience is death for creativity." Moreau's independent spirit resonated deeply with the social changes of the 1960s and 1970s. At a time when women were asserting autonomy in art, politics, and sexuality, she became a living emblem of female emancipation. Her influence extended beyond cinema. Writers, philosophers, and musicians regarded her as an intellectual muse. Orson Welles once called her the greatest actress in the world, while novelist Henry Miller praised her for bringing mystery back to womanhood. Later career. Even in her later years, Moreau continued to challenge herself artistically. She appeared in films such as La Vieille qui marche dans la mer, 1991, a darkly comic exploration of aging and desire, The Proprietor, 1996. An English-language role blending nostalgia and reflection, Time Regained, 1999, Raoul Ruiz's Proust adaptation, and One Day You'll Understand, 2008, about memory and the Holocaust. She also lent her distinctive voice to documentaries, narrations, and stage readings. Her mere presence could elevate a project. She was cinema personified. Honors and recognition. Jeanne Moreau was widely honored during her lifetime. Cannes Film Festival, jury president in 1975 and 1995. Berlin Film Festival, Golden Bear for Lifetime Achievement, 2000. Venice Film Festival, Golden Lion for Lifetime Achievement, 1992. commander of the Légion d'honneur, France's highest order of merit yet. She remained modest about accolades, saying, "Awards are like kisses in the dark. Pleasant, but they pass." Legacy. Jeanne Moreau's influence on cinema is immeasurable. She opened doors for actresses to portray intelligence, sensuality, and moral ambiguity without apology. Her work paved the way for later generations: Catherine Deneuve, Isabelle Huppert, Juliette Binoche, and Marion Cotillard, all owe a spiritual debt to her. Moreau's image, cigarette in hand, voice like velvet, eyes full of secrets, remains one of French cinema's defining icons. She represented the intertwining of art and life, imperfect, mysterious, endlessly fascinating. As Truffaut said of her, when Jeanne Moreau appears on screen, she doesn't act, she simply is. Iconic roles and collaborations. 1. Elevator to the Gallows, 1958, Der. Louis Malle. This film marked the true beginning of Jeanne Moreau's ascent to stardom. In Ascenseur pour l'échafaud, she plays Florence Corolla, a woman entangled in a murder plot gone awry. The story unfolds with suspense, noir aesthetics, and Miles Davis's haunting jazz score, recorded in improvisation as Moreau wandered through Parisian streets at night. Her performance was revelatory, understated, interior, full of tension and melancholy. She captured loneliness and fatalism not through dialogue, but through the emptiness of her gaze. Critics hailed her as the face of existential cinema. It was the perfect fusion of film, music, and mood, and it announced the arrival of a new kind of female protagonist in French film: enigmatic, independent, and emotionally complex. 2. The Lovers, 1958, Der. Louis Malle, released the same year, Les Amants shocked conservative audiences with its frank portrayal of female desire. Moreau played Jeanne Tournier, a bourgeois wife trapped in a loveless marriage, who experiences an awakening through a chance encounter with a young man. The film's sensual tone and psychological honesty made it controversial, banned in some countries, but it established Moreau as a symbol of sexual liberation and emotional authenticity. Rather than moralize, she portrayed desire as a form of truth, a confrontation with one's inner self. 3. Jules and Jim, 1962, Der. François Truffaut, perhaps her most famous role. Jules et Jim remains one of the great works of world cinema. Moreau's Catherine is the eternal feminine archetype, vibrant, elusive, tragic, and free. She drifts between two men who adore her, defying the conventions of love and morality. Moreau's performance transcends time. She embodied a generation's yearning for freedom, the poetry of instability. Her rendition of Le Tourbillon de la Vie, sung simply and joyfully, became the anthem of the new wave. Truffaut said of her, "She had everything, the spirit of a man and the charm of a woman. She was the perfect muse for modern cinema." 4. La Notte, 1961, Der. Michelangelo Antonioni. In this Italian masterpiece, Moreau stars opposite Marcello Mastroianni as Lydia, a woman whose marriage is collapsing under the weight of success and alienation. The film is a meditation on emotional decay and modern ennui. Her portrayal of silent despair and internal disconnection is haunting. She walks through Milan's sterile streets, embodying the loneliness of the urban soul. Antonioni once said that Moreau could express an entire novel in a single gesture. 5. Bay of Angels, 1963, Der. Jacques Demy, a departure from her darker roles. This luminous film explored obsession and chance through gambling. Moreau's character, Jackie, is radiant yet self-destructive, a woman intoxicated by the thrill of risk. With her platinum hair and white outfits, she seemed both angelic and doomed, a living paradox. The film is often seen as a metaphor for Moreau's own artistic philosophy. To live life as an act of constant wager and emotion. Partnerships with visionary directors throughout her career. Jeanne Moreau was drawn to artists who shared her appetite for exploration, not just filmmakers but thinkers. With Louise Buñuel, she explored erotic satire in Diary of a Chambermaid, 1964. With Orson Welles, she worked on The Trial, 1962, and Chimes at Midnight, 1965, and Welles often called her his favorite actress. With Tony Richardson and Joseph Losey, she brought her French mystique into English-language cinema. Unlike many stars, she never pursued fame abroad. She preferred to remain in Europe, where she could experiment freely. A director and creator in the 1970s, Moreau turned to directing, rare for actresses of her generation. Lumière, 1976, was her debut film, a lyrical meditation on the lives of four actresses, exploring friendship, aging, and identity. L'Adolescent, 1979, portrayed the awakening of a young girl during wartime France, tender, nostalgic, and deeply personal. Her direction revealed the same empathy and intelligence that defined her performances. She once remarked, "I never wanted to control anyone, only to understand them." Philosophy of love, art, and existence. Jeanne Moreau saw love and art as intertwined, both driven by curiosity, risk, and the acceptance of impermanence. She resisted sentimentality, believing that to live is to constantly shed illusions. She said in an interview, "We mustn't fear change because change is life. I love life passionately. And I know that it's finite, that's why it's so precious." Moreau never conformed to Hollywood standards of beauty or aging. She embraced time as a companion, not an enemy, and continued to act into her 80s with grace and dignity. Cultural and feminist legacy. Moreau's influence went far beyond cinema. She became a symbol of the thinking woman's sensuality, blending intellect and desire in a way that challenged stereotypes. In a time when women were often confined to romantic archetypes, she gave them voice, complexity, and agency. Her artistry inspired countless actresses, from Isabelle Huppert's cerebral intensity to Juliette Binoche's emotional transparency. Even global icons like Meryl Streep and Cate Blanchett have cited Moreau as a model of artistic integrity. Final years and death. In her later years, Jeanne Moreau remained a revered cultural presence in France. She served on film juries, mentored young actors, and continued to appear in select roles that matched her introspective temperament. When she passed away peacefully in her Paris apartment on July 31, 2017, tributes poured in from around the world. French President Emmanuel Macron called her a legend of cinema and theater, a woman who defied time. Her funeral at the Montmartre Cemetery was attended by filmmakers, artists, and admirers. Yet in true Moreau fashion, the ceremony was quiet, dignified, and unadorned. Eternal legacy. Jeanne Moreau remains the essence of French cinema, elegant but raw, intellectual but spontaneous, romantic yet realistic. Her work continues to inspire not just actors, but anyone who believes in the art of living passionately, without compromise. As critic Pauline Kael once wrote, "When Jeanne Moreau appears on screen, she reminds us what it means to be alive, fragile, yearning, and magnificent." A deeper look at Jeanne Moreau's filmography and artistic evolution. Jeanne Moreau's career was as diverse as it was enduring. She appeared in over 130 films, crossing genres, languages, and artistic movements. Her choices were rarely commercial. She favored depth over popularity, and truth over artifice. Below is a broad view of her career's progression through its most defining periods. I. Early career, 1949 to 1957. The classical foundations. Moreau's beginnings were in the theatre, the Comédie-Française, then the Théâtre National Populaire. She was disciplined by the classics, Racine, Molière, Marivaux, which gave her a mastery of language and stage presence that later translated beautifully to film. Her early screen roles were conventional. Supporting parts in costume dramas like Dernier Amour, 1949, and La Reine Margot, 1954. Critics called her promising but not yet distinctive. It wasn't until Louis Malle saw something deeper in her, a face capable of expressing thought, that her cinematic persona took shape. Breakthrough in the New Wave, 1958 to 1965. The Age of Liberation. The late 1950s brought both a new cinema and a new Jeanne Moreau. Elevator to the Gallows and The Lovers were her initiation into modern film language, natural light, real locations, emotional ambiguity. Her partnership with Malle was also romantic, and it reflected in their work, both intimate and fearless. Then came Jules and Jim, 1962, her defining masterpiece. Katherine, the woman who refuses ownership or definition, became the symbol of the new wave spirit. Her line, "Why should I choose? I want both of you," was not just dialogue, it was manifesto. During this era, she also worked with Michelangelo Antonioni, La Notte, 1961, exploring existential emptiness. Jacques Demy, Bay of Angels, 1963, blending chance and passion. Orson Welles, The Trial, 1962, symbolizing enigmatic truth amid absurdity. Moreau's face, luminous, intelligent, questioning, became the visual poetry of post-war Europe. 3. Mature period, 1966 to 1980, experimentation and self-reflection. Moreau's fame by the mid-1960s was international, yet she avoided Hollywood's lure. She once said, "Hollywood wanted me to be a French ornament. I wanted to be an artist." She turned to challenging and experimental works, Mademoiselle, 1966, Tony Richardson, a study of repression and cruelty. Shocking for its time. The Bride Wore Black, 1968, François Truffaut, a Hitchcockian tale of vengeance where she played a woman both victim and avenger. Moderato Cantabile, 1960. Peter Brook, a collaboration with Marguerite Duras, blending philosophy and eroticism. In the 1970s, Moreau expanded her craft to directing and writing, creating introspective films about women's inner lives. Lumière, 1976, portrayed 4 actresses discussing art, aging, and identity. L'Adolescent, 1979, was a tender exploration of youth, desire, and war. These works showed her as a pioneer, an actress taking creative control long before female filmmakers were common. Late career, 1981 to 2015, the grande dame of cinema as she aged. Moreau's power deepened. She played grandmothers, mentors, and ghosts, yet never relics. Her late performances carried quiet fire. Carrel, 1982, Rainer Werner Fassbinder, erotic, stylized, and provocative. La Vieille qui marche dans la mer, 1991, won her the César Award for Best Actress for her wickedly charming performance as a fading but fierce con artist. The Proprietor, 1996. Ismail Merchant, reflecting on exile and memory. Time Regained, 1999, Raúl Ruiz, a meditation on time and art, fitting for her age. One Day You'll Understand, 2008. Amos Gattai, about Jewish identity and family memory. Even into her 80s, Moreau was sought after by directors who wanted wisdom without sentimentality. She gave her last major film performance in Le Talent de Mes Amis, 2015. Her relationship with major directors Louis Malle, he was her first great cinematic collaborator and lover. Together, they created Elevator to the Gallows and The Lovers, two films that transformed French cinema. Malle described her as an actress who could think in silence. François Truffaut, their collaboration on Jules and Jim and The Bride Wore Black reflected a mutual fascination with women's interior freedom. Truffaut said, Jeanne Moreau didn't just act, she lived every scene as if it were happening for the first time in her life. Michelangelo Antonioni with Lynott. Moreau became the embodiment of existential alienation, a woman aware of the emptiness around her, yet unable to escape it. She later said that Antonioni's direction taught her the beauty of slowness, of silence. Orson Welles adored Moreau, casting her in The Trial and Chimes at Midnight. He once said, "She has the soul of a poet and the instincts of a revolutionary." Their friendship lasted decades. She even appeared in his unfinished The Deep. Welles often compared her to Shakespearean heroines, fierce, intelligent, immortal. Themes in her work throughout her career, Jeanne Moreau returned to a few central ideas: freedom and confinement. Her characters long for autonomy, whether in Love, Jules and Jim, Society, The Lovers, or morality, The Bride Wore Black. The mystery of desire. She treated eroticism as a psychological and spiritual force, not mere sensuality. Identity and time. Many of her later films meditate on memory, loss, and the inevitability of change. Women as full beings. She rejected the notion of women as accessories to men's stories, portraying them instead as subjects of their own destinies. Public persona and philosophy. Jeanne Moreau resisted labels. She was not a feminist activist in the political sense, but her life was profoundly feminist in example. She chose her path, spoke her mind, and aged without apology. I am not a star. I am a woman who does what she loves. She believed in embracing contradictions, beauty and decay, love and solitude, intellect and emotion. Her interviews often felt like philosophical conversations about the human condition. She lived quietly, avoiding gossip and publicity. She loved literature, painting, and travel. She spoke fluent English and Italian. Yet she always considered Paris her true home, particularly the Montmartre district, where she spent her final years. Cultural influence. Jeanne Moreau's influence can be seen across art, literature, and fashion. Designers like Yves Saint Laurent and Jean-Paul Gaultier cited her as a muse for her natural, unapologetic style. Writers such as Marguerite Duras and Jean Cocteau admired her as a kindred spirit, a woman who turned emotion into art. Modern filmmakers, including Jane Campion and Pedro Almodovar, have acknowledged her as a model for complex female characters. She represented what the French call l'âme libre, the free soul. Enduring symbol. After her death in 2017, tributes poured from every corner of the cultural world. The Cannes Film Festival dedicated its opening ceremony to her memory. The French newspaper Le Monde wrote simply, "With Jeanne Moreau, French cinema loses its conscience." Her legacy endures not in nostalgia, but in influence. Every time a woman on screen dares to be mysterious, intelligent, or unapologetically herself, Jeanne Moreau lives again. Jeanne Moreau's acting method. The art of emotional truth. Jeanne Moreau was never a method actress in the American sense. She did not rely on psychological exercises or rehearsed emotion. Her approach was intuitive, intellectual, and profoundly internal. She once said, "To act is not to pretend, it is to reveal what is hidden." Moreau believed that every gesture, pause, and silence should come from emotional memory and human observation, not from theatricality. She preferred minimalism, stripping away artifice until only truth remained. Her process combined discipline from her classical theatre background with the spontaneity demanded by the French New Wave. On set, she disliked rehearsing too much. She wanted freshness, the discovery of emotion in the moment. Directors often remark that she could change the meaning of a line simply by breathing differently before saying it. Her performances felt alive, full of contradictions, melancholy and humor, sensuality and intellect, confidence and doubt. She also possessed a painter's sense of space and rhythm. She knew how to move within a frame. In La Notte, her slow walk through the desolate streets of Milan is an entire emotional landscape, isolation, longing, and clarity, expressed without a word. The power of silence. One of Moreau's greatest tools was silence. While many actors feared it, she used it to convey inner transformation. In Elevator to the Gallows, when Florence realizes the murder plot has failed, her quiet, anguished walk through Paris becomes a symphony of despair. In Jules and Jim, her silences between laughter create layers of meaning, joy mixed with fatalism. Moreau understood that cinema, unlike theater, could capture thought itself, and she used her eyes as her voice. François Truffaut once said, "Jeanne could express what writers struggle to describe in 10 pages, just by looking at you." The feminine archetype reimagined before Jeanne Moreau. Women in film were often seen through male fantasies, the ingenue, the seductress, the wife, or the muse. After Jeanne Moreau, women on screen became thinkers, seekers, contradictions, human beings. She rejected the idea that femininity should be defined by youth or beauty. Aging, for her, was not a loss but a revelation. To age is not to fade. It's to become more concentrated. In The Lovers and Jules and Jim, she depicted a woman's freedom to choose love without shame. In The Bride Wore Black, she explored vengeance without apology. In La Notte, she gave loneliness a philosophical dimension. Moreau's characters were rarely moral or immoral, they were real and therefore free. Comparisons with her contemporaries Anna Karenina, France, Denmark, Anna Karenina, Jean-Luc Godard's muse, embodied the playful, childlike spirit of 1960s modernism, spontaneous and poetic. Moreau, by contrast, was older and more introspective. Where Karenina represented innocence discovering the world, Moreau embodied wisdom confronting it. Karenina's women were dreamers, Moreau's were thinkers. Monica Vitti, Italy. Monica Vitti, Antonioni's muse, was perhaps Moreau's closest counterpart. Both explored alienation and emotional silence. Yet Moreau carried a warmer, more sensual energy. Her melancholy was personal, not abstract. While Vitti seemed sculpted by existentialism, Moreau seemed to live inside it. Catherine Deneuve, France. Deneuve inherited the mantle of French femininity in the 1960s, representing icy beauty and restraint. Moreau admired her but stood apart. Where Deneuve symbolized elegance and mystery, Moreau symbolized intellectual fire and emotional courage. Deneuve was the statue, Moreau was the storm. Her relationship with feminism. Jeanne Moreau never aligned herself formally with feminist movements, yet her life and career expressed the very essence of feminist autonomy. She insisted on independence, financial, artistic, emotional. She refused to be categorized as a starlet or a muse. She turned down Hollywood contracts that would have paid fortunes but demanded obedience. "I wanted to choose. Always. That's the only freedom worth fighting for." Her films in the 1960s anticipated second-wave feminism by giving women interiority, women thinking about life, not merely reacting to it. Her legacy lies not in slogans but in embodiment. She lived the feminist idea that a woman's worth lies in her complexity. Jeanne Moreau and the philosophy of love. For Moreau, Love was not romantic escapism, it was existential.
Bye bye. Thanks for watching. Bye.